We're live, all the way live. Man, always a pleasure to be in your presence. Always a blessing. What are all these dings and dongs and things going on in my thing? Always a pleasure to be able to come to you live. Welcome to Culture and Code, the weekly show where we unpack the culture. We go deep into the worlds of business, tech, sports, entertainment. We are fortunate to have a network of 300 plus investors, founders, creatives, former athletes, current athletes, I don't know, rappers, wannabe rappers. Really fortunate to have this incredible community that we have called The Authenticated. This show is brought to you live every week, broadcasting live from Los Angeles, California, coming to you live from Pacific Coast Highway. It's the Culture and Co. weekly show. Man, I need a song. I need like a good song. What are all these dings and dongs and peaks and palms? Let's get rid of some of these things. Thank you, Lord. Get rid of. Okay. Shout out to my boys at LVRN. I love these guys. This is an old Christmas gift they sent me. One of the better management companies in the game. I hope I maintain, I hope I'm still on their Christmas list. This is from 2017. So all you hoodie people out there, I love hoodies. I wore my Atlanta Influences Everything hoodie last week. And today I'm wearing my LVRN hoodie. So super excited about hoodies. Hint, hint. We will wear your hoodie. Send me a hoodie. Would love your hoodie. Where do I want to begin this week? Well, we have a special guest this week. For those of you that didn't see the flyer, super excited to be talking to my man, my dude from Dubai, Omar, Tom. We're going to be talking about third culture kids and, the Dukkan show, which is a podcast show that Omar does out of Dubai. It's going to be great. It's going to be dope. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. But to begin, what's on my mind? Well, let's see. So Twitter is rolling out a new audio feature, I see, and it is reported that this new Twitter audio feature will be beta testing with marginalized communities and women, which I thought was quite interesting, considering that there is another audio app that we've been spending a lot of time on called Clubhouse. And Clubhouse has been an interesting space to be in, to say the least, for the last 4 months. We have an incredible residency and club there. Shout out to my folks who join us for all the things we do in Clubhouse. I look at this move by Twitter as a very strategic chess move. One of the things about Clubhouse is that the only way that you really communicate is via Twitter. So if anything, it's driven my Twitter usage up because I actually use Twitter as like a back channel. So ergo, Twitter then retains a lot of the information, tremendous information on Clubhouse users, because if you're using Twitter to back channel, you're essentially using Twitter for your messaging. And I'm sure this was a dependency or a watch out, I would say, by the folks at Clubhouse. But needless to say, Twitter has come in and said, we're gonna start our audio functionality. And all that is well and good, right? All that is well and good for the game of technology, for the game of social media, for the race for your attention, for your precious time that you have. You only have so much time in the course of the day. Where are you going to put that extra time? And so Silicon Valley and tech companies rely, Facebook, if you've seen The Social Dilemma, they rely on this idea that you have some extra time and we can build these sort of addictive personalities, addictive behaviors into devices that get you to keep coming back for more and more and more. Nobody is short of that. I wouldn't even say, everybody who's in the race for attention is playing in this game, right? This game of like, I want to get your attention. I want you to come back. I want to come back. So no shocker there, right? And no shocker that Clubhouse has, I would say, done an uptick in making sure that Black creative culture, young Black talent is well represented on the platform. They can hear the conversations. They see there's a competitor out there called Cookout that I hear is on its way and coming. And, I guess it'll be a Black people's version of Clubhouse. What's interesting is that all of them, Twitter's announcement was that they're going to roll out this audio feature. They're going to give the beta test, early invites to women and marginalized communities, thereby taking a page out of the out of the Clubhouse playbook. That's all well and good, right? My concern is actually more around does the creative economy, do creatives, do Black people recognize their value when they're on these platforms? A lot of what I do and a lot of my work is around what I call kind of cap table activism. And it's this idea that there's a little bit of a misalignment between the incentives of the platform owners, the investors, which is called the cap table, and even the executive teams, right? So sometimes they're not congruent, right? Like so your users are representative of a certain culture, but your investors and your executive teams don't reflect, and there's no consistency across that. And so I think a lot of my work has been, a lifetime work, but certainly in the last, few years when I made the transition from going from advertising and, my last business was a social media agency into this idea of equity. I started in Atlanta, Georgia, bringing venture capitalists to Atlanta to talk to celebrity managers and people of color, Black folks primarily in the city of Atlanta. And so my thoughts are about what does the 21st century modern company look like? What if you could start the company and go, we're going to actually create equity and opportunities for Black folks from the beginning, right? So not waiting and then I'm going to, raise 100 million or raise 50 million or raise 10 million. And then, and then I'll think about my users. But what if I actually thought about my users, my investors, and my executive team and saw that through the lens of Black folks and marginalized communities and women, right? What if I started from the beginning? And so the challenge I have with Twitter saying, yeah, we're going to beta test with marginalized communities and women, which is pretty much the most enviable, the primary, the sweet demographic for any brand. I mean, like, duh, marginalized communities and women drive everything. So it's not like, you're doing us any favors per se. But when will you, because we're not getting equity in Twitter because it's not happening. So we're going to get invites, right? We're going to get, your currency will be, you're one of the first people to try out the new audio Twitter thing. So maybe, I don't know, you can't pay rent with that, but you certainly will have social currency with that. Largely the same thing can be said about Clubhouse. I personally don't have any equity in Clubhouse. I'm not an investor in Clubhouse. I have a lot of invites, that's cool. But I bring a lot of traffic to Clubhouse. And so the question then becomes for someone like this thing called the Cookout that's launching. Like, do you follow this traditional pattern of going out, raising a lot of money, or do you actually reimagine what the equity pool could look like? So I've been playing around with lots of models around that. No disrespect to anybody, all respect to the folks who are out there building companies. I think what I'm thinking about, and I don't necessarily have the solution, I am working with people much smarter than I am around new ways to look at equity constructs. But I think a lot of what I think about and what we do at the Authenticated and Authenticated Ventures is thinking and helping work through what I would call community and marketplace. So, and how do we look at new ways to build these social networks that deliver community and marketplace, and then equity. And whether you do that equity one day through a token, through like a coin, you could have authenticated dollars, or you do that equity through some sort of fair and more diverse pool of investment capital. Those are the things that have probably been captivating my mind for probably the last 3 or 4 months. For some of you who are watching me and haven't really done a lot of work in understanding or don't have the access or haven't really researched like what a cap table is and how these companies are funded, I would just say, hey, come, we're going to be doing a lot more over the next for the rest of the year around this subject. We're going to be having venture capitalists and economists, and we're going to be doing a lot around looking at new economic models and new structures. And I think this is important for this reason. 2022, guys, 2022 is going to be the year of the creative. We have all this pent up creativity and opportunity because we're locked in the house, where we're not able to socialize. And so artisans, poets, writers, actors, rappers, anybody, me as a creative, I firmly believe that 2022 is going to be the year. It's going to be like a renaissance year. And so the question becomes, how do we surround creative culture with the tools and the resources to grow their own gardens? And so a lot of the work that I've been doing is centered around, the lead up into 2022, right? So 2020 for us, for all of us, was about hunkering down and building community. And that's what we've been doing at the Authenticated. We are a membership community. We're opening up membership December 10th, I think it is. We're going to be doing a bunch of events. We are a house of clubs, if you would. We do have a little residency at Clubhouse. We have some stuff going on in the virtual world. We have an app. So we've been kind of hunkering down and building our anchor. But 2021 will be about marketplaces and economic frameworks so that we can think differently about the distribution of wealth and capital. And so inviting you guys to come on this journey with us at whatever level, wherever you are in the spectrum. I am certainly not an economist. I didn't come into the world of the business world through any understanding of finance. I came into this game, really through hip hop and through the music business, and really thankful that was my Harvard Business School. But what the music business and coming in through that door taught me is the idea of having an asset, a song or a hoodie, or and being able to distribute that asset through digital means. I came into the record business just as Napster was starting was born. I was in the record business when Napster kind of happened, right? And so I was like a John the Baptist for my artists. I would sit down with, these 4 girls from Houston called Destiny's Child, and tell them, oh my, you gotta get a website. And I remember sitting with young Beyonce and her father Matthew, and convincing them to build a Destiny's Child website. That was my moment of activism, is recognizing at a really critical moment in the music business that this digital thing was not a cute Furby, right? It was actually going to change and revolutionize the way that we discovered music and traded music. I remember I was with DJ Jazzy Jeff, and he was like, he had just come back from like Japan or something, and he was like, dude, I just saw the entire Fresh Prince, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, like catalog on one CD-ROM, like walking down the street. And he was just like, it's a wrap, and so my entree into the business world came through entertainment and understanding, networks and systems and distribution, right? So I say all this to say that we are, for those of you who call yourself a creative, and that pretty much spans a lot of people, right? You don't have to be a rapper. You don't have to be, we're all part of this creative economy. 2022 is your year. And right now we're talking about systems, economic systems, digital platforms, and communities that will fuel a creative economy that will be bigger than anybody can imagine. Anybody can, I promise you. Like, if you think you've seen what's possible in these creative economies, because we're locked in 2020, right? March to December, because many of us are gaining new skill sets. Many of us are speaking new languages, because places like Clubhouse are bringing together venture capitalists, a homegirl from Atlanta, and they're in a room talking about changing systems. Like, it's moving faster and faster, right? 2021 will be about how you, as a creative, will hunker down and build your infrastructure, how you'll think about equity differently, how you'll think about marketplace differently, mark my words, marketplaces. And you'll think about either tokenization or equity in a whole new way, and it'll be an unlock for an entire economy. I think about, a lot of the conversations I hear, especially this year, is like, if I'm an artist, why would I need a record label? So I can go direct to my consumer. And I think about, like, I worked on Nas, I worked on Fuji, I worked on all these big artists. Like, even back then, like, if you could have created if you could have said, hey, I'm going to create, a Fuji's coin or something, back then, if you could have said to me that, there's this IP explosion that's about to happen for this group called Destiny's Child, the investment into Destiny's Child that Columbia Records made. By the way, the record business investments, you don't, it's like it's a losing proposition, because the economics are funny, the financing is funny. And so the next, group, the next Tyler the Creator, the next Astro World, he's going to do Astro World in a literal world, a literal virtual world that you're going to pay a token for. And instead of the Astro World being a physical space, it's going to be a digital space as well. And that's here. And that's obviously, we've seen that with Roblox and Little Nas X just did a partnership last week and did a thing. I think it was like 33 million people participated in that. So anyway, I can go on and on about where I see artistry, digital, community, and currency coming together. I'm really excited though today, because I'm going to talk a little bit and a lot of it about a place that I have found magical. I had the opportunity to go to my first trip to Dubai about I don't know 8 years ago, and it radically changed my life. Being in the Middle East and being in the UAE radically changed my life. I can just think of some magical moments, and and so I'm really excited today to bring on my guy, Omar Tom. I refer to him in my socials today as my plug. But he's more than my plug. He is a great guy and helps me think a lot broader about the world. Hello.
Yo,
What's going
hey,
on?
what's up? How's it going? Good
Yalla,
morning.
baby, yalla, baby.
I
I know like three Arabic words, by the way.
mean, you got two down, so that's good.
Yalla, baby.
Yalla Habibi is the right way to go.
Inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
There's
There you
also
go.
yalla, habibi, and yalla, BBT, right? It's like a two. There's two, right?
Yeah, Habibi is masculine, Habibti is feminine.
Ah, wait,
Yeah,
habibi is
kind of like Habibi is masculine, so you say that to a guy. Habibti is feminine. That's to a girl.
BT. See, like,
Yeah.
the thing about me is you can me anywhere in the world, and I'll get just like if I were to spend 2, 3 months in the region, I would be good. I'm really like I go to Brazil, to the Bay. I can, you know what I'm saying? I can totally
Mm-hmm.
mashallah, mashallah. Yeah, I know mashallah too.
Mashallah. Yo, no doubt.
Inshallah, and of course inshallah.
Inshallah is wishful thinking.
Yes. What you say?
Oh, I said inshallah as wishful thinking, like when
Yeah.
inshallah something great, something will happen, right? Inshallah you'll prosper.
I
That's
drop it.
always wishful thinking.
I drop it inshallah the way somebody in Philly drops a John. You know, yo, that John is a John. Yo, I drop it inshallah whenever I can. So
There
anyway,
we go.
ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have Omar Tom live and direct from Dubai.
Dubai, you got that one right. You sounded like a local.
That's the whole thing. You taught me this, man. When you get to Dubai, you actually I tried to distance myself from the expats and the gringos. That was like always my goal. Like
Oh,
I want to be the only American in the room, and I really appreciate you in helping facilitate some of those moments. And I
my
just feel
pleasure.
like places like Dubai are better experienced through the eyes of locals. And I'm very thankful for your, your guidance on that and your tour
My
guide
pleasure.
on that. But
My
what I
pleasure.
began to uncover, and we'll talk a little bit about this,
Yeah.
is that when I got there, I didn't know anything about the region. I didn't know where I'd find commonalities. And what I began to realize is someone like you, Omar, like you're literally the embodiment of like someone who is in the region, but you think globally. I like to call it like global local. So
Yeah.
you're like sitting in Dubai, but your preferences and your music, and your content acquisition strategies are completely global. And I never
Right.
forget we would talk sometimes, and you'd be putting me up on something that's happening in LA. I was like, wait a minute, how is he in Dubai? And it all makes sense now, but back then I was just like, what? But maybe we can recount, because we did this on your podcast show, maybe how we got connected and maybe tell the story again. You tell
Yeah.
the story. I'm going to use the bathroom. You tell us this is
I-
going to be odd. It's going to be awkward. The bathroom is right here. You
All
tell the
right, yo,
story.
go ahead.
Yeah, I go.
Go
Okay.
ahead. I'll entertain everybody till you're back. All right, so real quick, James and I met in about 2011. So at the time, I remember this. I got a mention on Twitter from at key influencer asking me, "Hey, it's my first time coming to Dubai. Where can I get great sneakers from?" And I thought to myself, this person's crazy because like I ordered my sneakers online from the US or from Europe. And I was wondering why is this guy asking me to buy sneakers from Dubai? At the time, the sneaker culture was not what it is today. So uh, my response was like, hey, listen, if you want to get sneakers there, like I would recommend it. You can just get it online the same way I would, and I'd get it from the US. So I followed him. He followed me back, and we were just talking. And he was telling me about how this was the first time coming to the Middle East, and he would like to be able to, understand the culture, connect with some people here. And I was like, all right, great, let's do that. And this entire time, I'm trying to figure out how he found out I was a sneaker collector of any sort. And I realized months ago from that contact, I tweeted about a new pair I got. That's all that it was. That was it. That was that one tweet. And anyway, so we were supposed to connect a few times. It didn't work out, and wasn't sure what was happening with him. And eventually forgot about it. Months later, I show up to work one morning, and they ask everybody to come to the boardroom. There is the speaker who's here is going to tell us about his work and something that we can learn from him. And I show up, and this dude in the meeting in a hat, a suit, rocking Air Force Ones, mad dreadlocks, talking about how he did this for Beats by Dre and that for Nike, and working with Jazzy Jeff and working with this artist in the music industry. And I was just so curious. So in the middle of the meeting, pulled up my laptop and I Googled James Andrews. And the first thing that showed up was his Twitter handle. And by that, that's when it just hit me that this was the person I've been speaking to months prior. And in the middle of the meeting, I just called. I was like, "Oh my God, that's you!" And he stopped. Everybody stopped. They're all looking at me like I was crazy. I'm like, "Yo, your key influencer, OT official. We spoke on Twitter." And it was like we knew each other for years. This moment where we hugged, they're like, and at the time, everybody's still looking at us, wondering what's going on. And I turned around and kind of just told people, like, "Oh, yeah, we just connected on Twitter." Like it wasn't that big a deal to it. But back then were the days of the Twitter meetups and the hangouts, and like when you finally meet someone in person that you spoke with on Twitter, there was a lot of excitement to it,
Right.
and that's all it took. And from that point, I think we probably hung out every day throughout your time in Dubai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's a great story. I was like a human data. I was like a human social media command center back then. I was
Oh yeah.
scraping conversations in my spare time, yeah. I mean, I think I learned from traveling the road in the music business, and certainly running around with people like DJ Jazzy Jeff. Like, if you want to find your tribe when you go to
Yep.
a city, it's like a gang sign. Like, who got them sneakers? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you go and
Yep.
for me, I always think a lot in tribe. And for me, I knew if I could find the people who understood sneaker culture, that would lead me to like a treasure trove of like, okay,
Right.
especially back then, less so probably now.
Yeah.
But back then, when it wasn't, sneaker culture wasn't necessarily where it was today, if I just
No.
put out a few crumbs and said a few things, I would then bring in the people that would probably help me understand and experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely learned that back in the day of moving around with DJ Jazzy Jeff, and like we'd pull up in
Yeah.
Cologne, pull up in a weird town in France, and you would just find your people. And so I was just really thankful that that's the way that unfolded. And then yeah, I spent I would come over to Dubai often, and Omar just had an incredible sense of the U.S. culture and American culture, and also obviously was teaching me about the culture in the region. Where did that come from? Had you been someone who spent a lot of time in the U.S. before that?
At that time, no. I mean, I eventually moved to the Bay Area when you and I hung out in San
But
Francisco.
you had never been to the
But
U.S.
up until that point, I've never been. And I
Wow.
mean, it's funny that we're talking about this because I actually gave a talk on similarly on this topic a while back, where because of growing up here, I was in an international school full of students from all over the world, but we were 10 Black people out of 3,000 students or so. And not and getting negative attention, getting into a lot of fights and racial slurs, and I was constantly defending my blackness. I was constantly getting into fights and altercations with other kids because I was black. And then I would go to Sudan, and then when I go to see my family in Sudan, I was defending my Sudaneseness. Like I was seen as the foreigner that left, and I was not accepted. So it was this constant struggle, and I think that's what breeds third culture kids, where you feel like you don't fit anywhere yet everywhere at the same time. You're always constantly battling and dealing with trying to prove yourself worth as a person from a certain place. And the first time I've ever seen my likeness anywhere was on television. I saw Martin, I saw the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I saw hip hop artists on MTV, NBA players, and that was the moment where, oh my God, these people look like me. And the interesting bit was that they were coveted. Other kids that I got into fights with in school looked up to them, and that ended up being my compass. I'm like, all right, well, if that's what it is, then I started emulating that, where I s- um, I found my way through hip hop music and hip hop culture overall, sneaker culture, basketball. I found my way into black culture as a home, really, a home away from home, in that sense, where I'm like, well, because African cult at the time, I didn't understand African culture. I didn't understand my Sudanese culture. I was detached away from it, so there was a bit of loathing to it because nobody cared for it, or and it was disrespected in some ways. So I went for what was coveted. If that's coveted, I need to be that in every shape or form, in every way possible. Read all the books, studied everything there was to it to understand what it was, be so I can emulate it and be true to it. And that sort of became a big part of my identity, and that's what connected me to that culture. And with the internet, it just became it opened new doors for me. I started digging deeper into things, and I remember at some point I decided to be a DJ. So I would like hang out at this record store back in Sharjah, where I grew up initially, and got to learn. And I would work with them part time after hours, learning how to DJ, and fixing up cables and just working in the shop. And that connected me even deeper to it. So that's where it began for me. And I think with time, it just eventually became a big part of who I am. I found my tribe. I found people like me who were hip hop heads, but they were not from Sudan. They were not necessarily black. They're from different parts of the world. And we came together, and I started discovering hip hop artists that were performing in town and the big DJs. And it just became a universe that accepted me for who I was. And
Yeah.
that became my home. And quickly I learned that home was never a place or um, a country that is surrounded by borders, but rather people and culture. That became home for me. And in that case was hip hop culture. And we've said this on the podcast previously, where even when I travel now, the same way you found me when you came to Dubai, anywhere I go, I would want to know where the record store is at, where the sneaker store is at, where the kids hang out at, and I'll make it a point to just visit those places and talk to people. A great example, my business partner and I, we flew out to Amsterdam on a business trip, and I did my usual search on the trip there, and we found a coffee shop called Black Gold. Like, yo, let's go check it out. And it wasn't that far. We walked down,
Yeah.
and turns out it's this old school hip hop DJ in Amsterdam that eventually retired from the music business and set up this coffee shop,
Oh,
where it's black gold because black is for coffee, but also black records. So you show up there, it's hip hop tunes blaring. There are random DJs that would come in and start spinning on the turntables, and it was just this atmosphere and this vibe. And that became our spot. We would go to that cafe every single day. I connected through him. I met some of the hip hop OGs of Amsterdam,
wow.
and the artists and the musicians and the designers. And what was cool is that he'd have a lot of artwork on the walls where local designers can feature their pieces and help them get it sold. And now I know every time I go to Amsterdam, that's my spot. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just an easy connection. And now it's just second nature. Anywhere I'm going, I will see who are the players, who are the people in these spots, and go see them. I
Wow.
flew to Rome. When I went to Rome on my own, I did the same thing. I flew when I was in Ethiopia or Zanzibar. Like anywhere I'd go to find those places. And now it sort of became part of the practice because I you don't need to explain yourself. Like if you're part of the culture, people know it. When as soon as you walk in, there's a knowing, and that knowing is always when you get that nod, like this nod of approval. As soon as you walk in somewhere, that's
Yeah.
it. Like you're in. And Carlos Mayer said it best, which was we spoke about this on the podcast. Um, he said that as a graffiti artist, when he travels the world, he travels with two passports. One
Yeah.
passport is his American passport, so he could travel, and his second passport is hip hop. That's the passport that gets you in the community, gets you in the culture, gets you with the people. And it's the most truthful insight that I've personally experienced that ever was.
Yeah. Wow. So much to unpack in that. I see Reem from the Dukkan show is on the check-in, by the way. Shout out to Reemy.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about a lot of what you said. One, it's just beautiful to be part of a culture and have that passport, and to be an early member of this sort of rise to commercialization of hip hop. That's essentially the point at which my career started. But I do love and recognize being a child of the Bay Area, growing up, in a place that's really inclusive, right? Sometimes, by the way, in the hip hop story, the Bay Area and California doesn't get included early enough. We think of California as like, oh, Dr. Dre
doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah,
what about Oakland?
Exactly. And so, and you know this because you lived in the Bay. But one of the things that gets left out in the story of hip hop is the contributions of the Asian community, Filipinos. Were the b-boys that I battled against, at Pier 39 in San Francisco. I wasn't very good, by the way, as a battler, but I did try to dance a little bit. I had my linoleum, and I would bring it out to the Pier 39. But I say this story about the Bay Area because growing up in the Bay, it was this sort of inclusive culture, right? Latinos, Asian, white folks, like we were all kind of, respective of our communities. And so, but hip hop doesn't become what it is if not for the contributions of KMEL in San Francisco. That's where Sway started. College radio in San Francisco. We used to have this conference called the Gavin Conference, which was in the Bay Area. It's where like all the college radio DJs would come. So I'm going to bring this all forward to say that hip hop in and of itself as an art form is one of the most inclusive genres there. We accept everybody. We are less like the Donald Trump Republican Party and more like this beautiful mosaic, right? Borderless at that, right? So I can see a b-boy in Tel Aviv. I can see a b-boy in Qatar. I can see a b-boy wherever, and I can see
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so that's what makes our connection really, really dope is that, the way that we look through life is very similar. And so the next thing I'm thinking a lot about, so now that we've established that, is where that trust and where that sense of tribe moves online, right? So now when you have, you're not going to a coffee shop in Amsterdam, or maybe you aren't. It'll be a minute before you move around like that. But the equivalent of a coffee shop in Amsterdam now becomes the virtual space that I'm building right now. I got to tell you about this. Yeah. And so when you walk in the door of my digital platform, it's like, oh, that dude gets me, right? Or whatever your digital presence looks like. Because now our digital presence is our home, right? And so, so funny, I've been thinking a lot about like how to design architecture, digital architecture, let's just call it, that reflects, and as soon as you walk in the door, you feel comfortable. Because I believe that one of the greatest traits or commodities right now is trust. I think you will be looking for trust in your physical spaces, and you'll be looking for trust in your digital spaces. You're gonna want to go and feel like this place gets me, and I've been talking a lot. I built this residency, I call it, at Clubhouse, and I've been telling my team, because we're building some mobile stuff underneath the Authenticated, about the idea of trust is in the digital space is like when you go to a club. In the 90s, pre-social media, a lot of my business dealings happened at Puffy's restaurant, or it might have been a strip club, whatever, right? And the idea is when you walk into the club, you got pat down, right? Security, so that you can then go in and be free. You can drink, you can do whatever you do without the idea that someone's going to shoot the club up. There was a form of safety that allowed me to, hey, kick it, hang out, you know what I'm saying? I know it's going to be good. I can party with gangsters, but they're not going to shoot the club up. I feel that way about the digital spaces, is that there are not a lot of doormen out there. And so what happens is just a free for all. And I can't trust that I can safely be myself, be myself in the digital spaces. So we're thinking a lot about trust because this is the internet. I have no idea who's watching us right
Mhm.
now. It's kind of coming in. But I'm not about to let these random folks come into just my house, right?
Right.
So anyway, I'm throwing some big themes out to you this morning because part
Yeah,
of Culture and Code is this weird, unscripted, straight from the dome, freestyle kind
I
of
love
site.
it.
And you're literally in the middle of what we're working on right now. And so when you join my show, you join my diabolical of the moment
That's amazing.
brain. That's where I am today.
I love it. Dude, I love it. I think, by the way, on the concept of trust, I think even in the digital, I mean, even before the digital space, and I think this is going to play a big part here, is cosign.
Yeah.
Cosign. I mean, one
Oh,
of the best filters
yeah.
of anything is a cosign. I
That's right.
remember one of my clients that we've worked with, who's a very well reputed Emirati businessman, showed up to my office and said that the only reason I'm here is a five, six different people who are from his close circle of friends have said that we do great business. And
What
that's
was
why he came to give me a brief.
recognize people are listening. We've dropped a lot of terms that because we are UAE friendly, they may
Yes.
or may not know. If you can just break down what Emirati means.
Oh, sorry. Emirati are the citizens here in the United Arab Emirates in the UAE. So population breakdown, Emiratis are approximately 11% of the population. So even though they're the citizens here, they're the minority.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so this guy shows up to my office says, yeah, it's only because five people said that you're good. He's like, I only do business with people that I'm told are good at what they do.
Yeah.
So with that, be it as it may, like I have a brief for you for a project I'd like for you guys to work on. And not only did we end up working on the project, but we developed a great friendship after that. And
But
that's
it seems like, sorry, I'm going to cut you off again. It seems
no,
like
sorry.
when I think about the way that I move around in Dubai,
Hmm.
that more so than the US, that trust is actually highly valued. And I just want you to go a little deeper into that because I feel like I was going to start a business, you know this, in Dubai.
Hmm.
And I recognized that the only way I was going to be able to start this business in Dubai is by actually spending time there. And I didn't have the
Right.
ability to spend more time there, but just unpack why trust in the region is so important and the way.
Well, because so the middle, I mean, a big part of the Middle Eastern region, when we look at the history of it, is heavily tribal. For example, the UAE before, I mean, December 2nd, the UAE marks its 49th year. So it's a very young country, right? Prior to that, the seven emirates, the seven states that make the UAE were actually led by seven tribes. And each tribe has a tribal leader. And that's how it initiated. And this is a similar formula you see across the region. Anywhere from Morocco to Sudan, all the way to Lebanon, you always have key tribes that are known to lead.
Yeah,
So, and traditionally, you didn't have contracts or banks back in the day. So it's all about sort of and you shake on it. That's what it is.
right,
And where does bond here? Like if
right,
anywhere in the world, where does bond? It's here.
right,
I was raised that anytime I would say anything, my dad would check me and be like, yo, a man stays by his word. You live or die by it.
right.
Right. And I always get checked with that line from my dad. So here, before their contracts, there needs to be trust first.
Yeah,
Contracts now are formality, right?
right,
And I mean, within corporate structures, obviously it's a practice, but with SMEs or with between various people, a lot of the times there are no contracts. Like, you know what, I like you, let's work together, let's make this happen, and you come to the table and agree to something. Um, and that's how it used to be. But then obviously deals break, issues happen, etc. Contracts became a mandatory practice. But generally, trust, when you give somebody your word, you don't need it proven on email. You don't need it proven on a message or in a contract. You stick to it. And traditionally, that's how our fathers did it, our forefathers did it. And they were the type that would risk big, lose or win big. You know, they would go all in. So old school approach to business. So that that is a learning some of us have. Not everybody has it. And Dubai being metropolitan that it is, you have all kinds of people here. I mean, one of the most diverse parts of the world. So because of that, you know, when you work with, Emiratis, trust is still a very big factor for them. They would not work with you unless somebody tells them that you are good. You need that cosign. You need someone to say, work with X,
Yeah.
right? And then off of that, what's going to end up happening? You're going to start getting recommended. So they're going to start telling other people about you, right? And depending on who you are, there's credibility there. So, for example, if I work with someone who's not good, even if they're one of my closest friends, I would never recommend them for something specific because then that's my rep on the line. That cosign is going to cost me later if they don't perform,
Right.
right? So you have to take that very seriously, and that's how it works here. And I think in a way, I find that um, comforting. I know how to operate in this space really, really well, but also anywhere else in the world I go, like I expect it. So practice is like getting ghosted when you're talking to people or messaging or and this happens like you fly out somewhere or you want to meet people like you know what, don't worry, I got you, I'll take care of you at the door, you don't have to pay to get into the club or whatever it is, right? And
Right.
then you get to the door, they're not answering their phone. Right, like that's like you lost all credibility in that
Right.
moment, right? So y- I think for a lot of us, you never want to be that guy.
Right.
So whatever you put on the table, you make sure you could deliver.
Right.
And I think it's a wonderful practice. I believe in it heavily. And to do business here, you either got to. I agree. You got to be physically present to kickstart it, or you got partners that you have that deep level of trust with,
Right.
where you know they're looking out for your benefit. And plus, now since COVID, really you can run a business from where you are right now in Dubai.
Right.
So that was one of I think the positive outcomes of it.
Yeah, my thinking 2011, 2012 thinking. So we'll have to update my hard drive, update my operating system a little
Yep.
bit. And but I do believe, and I'd love for you to confirm this, that the region is a wonderful place to look at right now to be building a culturally driven business. Talk a little bit about what you see in Dubai. I have a deal I want to talk to you about actually as I'm talking to you right now. There's a
Okay.
deal that I have yet to bring across your table that's going to get you really excited. Let's actually start here because it's actually related to this. Talk about things like the
Right.
rise of Soul DXB and some of the stuff that's happening in
Oh
sneaker
yeah. Wow.
culture in Dubai. I
All
don't know
right.
a lot about Soul DXB, but I know that
Okay.
there's been
So
music festivals in Saudi. There's been Soul DXB
Middle East.
lot going on that maybe my listeners, my viewers, and maybe my investors, I see you out there, could be interested about investing in Dubai.
All right. So Soul DXB is probably one of the largest events in the region. People fly out to attend Seoul DXB. It's usually 3 days of the year that happens in December because December weather in Dubai is great.
Love it.
Pe-
My favorite.
it's cookout. It's like cookout season, right? Like everybody's out having a great time.
Yeah.
So when Seoul DXB first kicked off, this was about, my God, maybe 9 or 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. At this point, um, we were about 50 or 60 sneakerheads in a little warehouse space where these guys brought sneakerheads. They got a couple of DJs, a few rappers and some singers, and we're all cooped up in this little space just there to, I think, it went and just meet each other. Like you didn't know there were other sneakerheads around, but also connecting, and you can tell something is brewing. That was that moment where like this is gonna go big, and you just felt it because there were only a few of us, but again, there was a knowing, there's a familiarity and likeness, and guys, girls, different age groups, different racial ethnicities were just there because of the love of sneakers, right? And and they built this little makeshift skate ramp outside, and you had a couple of skateboarders and a graffiti artist painting a wall. Like you saw something cooking, and every year I've been since then, I'm witnessing the growth of Soul DXB.
Yeah.
Today, it got to a point where it is, as I said, it's the largest festival. You got hip hop concerts happening. You have sneaker trade, sell. I mean, if any of my sneakerheads here are I mean, sneakerheads would know. Yeah, you go to sneaker events where you would sell and trade sneakers, and you go to buy sneakers. So you have that component there. Do you have a lot of boutique F&B restaurants that would come and set up, and barbecue, Jamaican food, whatever, what have you. Also, even cultural stuff like chai karak, which is a condensed tea with milk that they love to drink here. So you have all these food stalls. You got sneaker brands now. Remember, we went from a room of 50 people in a warehouse
Yeah.
to now Nikes and Nike, Adidas, Puma, New Balance, all the major sneaker players are building giant experiential spaces.
Yeah.
So now it's in a huge outdoor space. Brands are building these massive arenas. Experiential spaces where you can come in and engage with the brand. You have musicians performing at various parts of it, DJs everywhere. You had everybody from, I mean, last year's had the Wu-Tang was performing. They had Protege, if I'm not mistaken, Coffee, and you're bringing all these international artists, but also you're showcasing artists from the region and from the UAE. And then and what's great about it is, for a sneakerhead, you can buy sneakers that are available there that you'll never get anywhere else, because they're like a Soul DXB exclusive edition, for example. They've worked hard to come to this point. Um, they they've developed their own podcasting system. They have their own what they call Soul Sounds, which is just a collection of DJ mixes that they've recorded over the past 10 years. And it became a place to come and experience hip hop culture through and through.
Yeah.
Back in the day, where it was one of those things that was just for a little group of people. Now, marketing agencies are there, business investors would show up, all types of people from different walks of life would want to come and experience this. People fly in from the region to come and be at Soul DXB.
Yeah.
And that was such a wonderful journey to see that come to life. Another example now, so this is Soul DXB. Saudi Music Festival was something else, which is called Middle Beast, sorry, which was for the first time Saudi Arabia hosted a 2-day festival over the weekend, 12-hour days, DJ after DJ, from regional and Saudi DJs and international DJs, to celebrate music, to celebrate life, for people to have a good time. And if you told me 2 years ago this was happening, it was unfathomable. There was no way you could ever do anything like that in Saudi Arabia. And you're telling me guys and girls are gonna hang out? Wait, they're not split up? This is not segregated? Like, it felt like insanity, but it did happen. And the Saudi reforms and the changes in law over the past few years, we felt it. I mean, 2019, I've done more business in Saudi Arabia than I've done in Dubai, and I spent a lot of time there. The
Wow.
same people that put together Middle Beast, we ended up connecting with them. And for one of our clients, which Vans, we Vans wanted to develop a few ad campaigns in Saudi Arabia, and we're like, maybe not. What if we do something different? Nobody knows that there is street culture in Saudi Arabia. Nobody knows we got the b-boys, the skaters, the DJs, the hip hop artists. What if we create a docu-series documenting Saudi street culture? Nobody can believe. I mean, I don't know, your viewers who are watching from the US or any part of the world right now, the idea that Saudi has street culture
Right.
sounded insane.
Right.
Not only did we find the players and the people in it, we ended up creating a docu-series. We ended up hosting events with them, and it's all grassroots. And
Wow.
I mean, one of my favorite times spent in Saudi, chilling with these guys. And then it was so funny because we wanted to organize this earlier in 2018, but we had to get a push because they're organizing Middle Beast, and we didn't even know that they were organizing the music festival. So seeing these things come to life in this part of the world is amazing. But I think more importantly, that local artists and the culture here is growing at a rate I did not imagine. I think that speed of growth was something that I couldn't foresee, but I knew something was bubbling, something was cooking, and we're part of it. We're part of that development. And I think when you're in it, it's hard to pull out for a second and look at it from the outside. But once you do that and look at it and see things in hindsight, you start to realize how much we've done in the past 15, 20 years and how far we've come in this part of the world in that sense. And I think this is only the beginning. It just started. Where this is going to go over the next few years is it's going to skyrocket to new plateaus. And I think I'm excited to be here for that. I'm excited to be part of that.
Talk about the work. Well, let's talk about the Dukkan show, and then I'd love to talk about the work of the shop and what you guys do there. A little bit about how you got there. Yeah.
All right. So at the time, I was an advertising strategist. This was back in 2015 when this was when I came back from the US, and I decided to start a podcast that was about society and culture, and more importantly, about third culture kids and kids of diaspora, people like myself that, you know, home is the hardest question to ever ask. So we created our own home, a safe space at the Dukkan where people can hang out. And for the non-Arabic speakers here, Dukkan literally means shop. It's the corner store, it's the grocery, the liquor store, the bodega, right? It's it's the cornerstone of community, of every neighborhood. And that was the place where we felt whole, where we were ourselves. It didn't matter who you were, where you came from, or whether you're a guy or girl. Like you had a space there. You had a safe space to come and hang out, chill, have discourse. You go there before or after a basketball game. Any time of day you go there, chances are you'll meet somebody you know. And I wanted to recreate that experience online and digitize that experience. And podcasting was the format that we thought would be perfect for it. So we created a show where literally you hear the sounds of the streets in the background. The listener, and this is the way I remember I developed it, was that I wanted the listener to feel as though they're walking down the street, they hear this conversation and they grab a seat, they come and sit down with us and they join in, which is why the show always began and ended in the middle of a conversation. So there was a lot of in-depth planning that went into it. And the purpose of it was to share our culture, to be the voice from the Middle East to the world. And that's why we kept our show in English, because I wanted people in LA all the way to Tokyo to hear what the Middle East sounds like.
Yeah.
And I think the moment that we knew we were onto something, I'll never forget this. We got an open letter from a kid in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona, saying that, and I remember because we did a Ramadan series, and he said that he felt like for the first time he has friends in the Middle East. He never knew what the Middle East was like. He didn't know what we were like. And he was shocked at the fact that, hold on, we speak English well. And we sound like we could be friends. We sound like people he sees himself hanging out with. And he felt like he was genuinely sitting with us and being part of our conversations. And he felt so connected to us. He never met us. And I think reaching him made it very clear to us that that's what we got to keep doing. You're talking at a time where the Middle East is constantly in the news for under negative connotations. Terrorism, the wars that are happening around, all the issues that we were facing in the Middle East that we are victims of ourselves. But unfortunately, international media projected that it was the Arabs or the Middle East. And we made it a point to fight that, but we're not going to fight fire with fire, but rather we wanted to fight fire with love, with discourse, with clarity, with humor, and really like grab a seat, let's sit together and let's talk. And that's how we created the show. And as the show developed, I decided that I was going to quit my job and turn and build a business that the show is part of. So the focus of the business is to become the authority in contemporary Middle Eastern culture. That's what we want it to be. And when I quit to start this, Reem, who's in the chat as well, shout out to Reem. At the time, I'll never forget this. She took me out to dinner, and we were already friends. I was recording the podcast at her studios. At the time, she was so Reem back then owned a video production company, and her business partners were a sound studio, and she had studios. I'm like, oh my god, great! I need a place to record my show. And she was wonderful. She's like, you know what? Anytime after 6 p.m., the studio is yours. You're welcome to come and use it. So I would leave my job at 6 sharp, come down, whether I had an episode to record or not, just to be there and just to work in that space. So, and we ended up we're great friends, we're family, and that was my day. I would leave at 6, come and hang out with her and the rest of the team, and we'd just kick it and work together. And eventually she took me out to dinner and she said, look, I have a budget to hire a salesperson. but I feel like maybe you could make use of the budget. What do you want to do? And I told her, well, actually, I quit my job. I'm looking I'm looking to set up a business. This is what I'm, and the things that I've been talking about quitting to set up a business for a while with her. So it wasn't a new conversation. But I'm like, well, let's start a business. And she said, all right, well, this is my budget. I'm going to invest it in you. Let's do this.
Right.
And that's how we started Dukkan Media. And funny funny enough, at the time it wasn't called Dukkan Media. We called it Cause Culture because the idea was that the impact is we everything we do needs to cause cultural impact. That
Love it.
was the mandate for us.
Love it.
And so we called the company Cause Culture. Then I realized it was challenging phonetically for a lot of people to understand what we say when we say, "Oh, where are you calling from?" I'm calling you from Cause Culture, and nobody ever got it. Almost always the reaction is, "Huh? What was that?" So I realized phonetically it was challenging, but when you read it, it makes sense. So a friend of ours was just like, "Everybody already knows you two as the Dukkan Show. Why do you not just change the name to Dukkan Media?" And it was so obvious, but I think at the time I thought of things too deeply, and I was not looking at what's obviously in front of me. I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I don't know why we do that." So Rim and I went down. We changed our company name to Dukkan Media, and we've been running it ever since. It's been, what is it, 4 years now.
What are some of the things you work on? What are some of the clients you worked with?
So, I mean, everything from public to private sector. Our key clients that we've been working with for the longest are Nike, Converse, Vans in Saudi Arabia. We have worked with the Executive Council, which is one of the government entities here, the Dubai Sports Council, which is the government body for regulating sports here, the General Sport Authority in Saudi Arabia. Clearly, you can see there's there's a sport theme, but also we worked with banks as well. I worked with a couple of local banks. We work with agencies as well. We consult with a few agencies here, like RGA. I think anybody from New York or London who are in the industry might be familiar with them. We consulted for Lee Burnett and a few other agencies. So we work with both agencies and businesses.
Yeah.
A few F&B outlets, and we actually helped build a few brands from scratch, which was a lot of fun. And other than that, so that's one side of the business, which is where initially used to be the our the majority of our revenue coming in from it. The other side, what we call play, we run an R&D shop of content. I mean, we have 5 podcasts. We'd always create new shows. We'll switch the formats around. We'll mess around with things a little bit and see what works and what doesn't, and develop our own benchmark in the podcasting space. But also, I think Reem had a lot of foresight in that space when it came to video as well. I mean, sold the XB 2017. Reem, correct me if I'm wrong, if my memory fails me, but sold the XB 2017. They built a radio booth for the first time, and we came in as one of 3 shows. It was our show, Stretch and Bobito, from New York. They were doing their show, and there was another show from the UK, which I can't remember their name right now. And what we decided to do is that we put up a phone in the corner of the room, and we're broadcasting live to Facebook. By the following year, Reem has figured out a way with her team to create a television broadcast experience that live streams online. So we started live streaming with 3-4 cam setups, our Dukkan spaces. We would build an old school 1980s UAE Dukkan that brought back nostalgia and memories of the space. And we'd host our podcast from there live with 4 cameras, and we ran it like a TV show. And it was great because we built it as live experiences. So it was an installation, if you will. So then people can come in, they can hang out. We had old snacks that people grew up with, so they could come and like kick back, relax, watch us, and enjoy their snacks, and people connected. And that was an experiment of its own, and we're just live streaming from that space. And and I never forget, this one guy ended up messaging us saying, "I'm coming from Abu Dhabi to see this." That's a 2-hour drive.
Right.
I was like, "I heard about what you guys are doing. I left work. I'm driving down to come see you guys. Don't leave until I get there." So which was wonderful. And then we just kept getting better at developing live stream and experimenting with content creation.
Right.
We had an experiment that we called Studio 5, which was one of the sound studios where we dedicated to experimenting with video content. There was Reem hosted for her staff a chili eating contest. So we messed around with that kind of idea. We started documenting ourselves. Okay, if we go to events or go to places, how do we document that? What kind of content we can create people would like? And it's just R&D.
Yeah.
Let's see what works. Let's see what people like. And I think that has taught us so much because we built everything from scratch and we've tested it ourselves. So when we come to the table now in the content space for any client, oh, we've done that before, and this is
Yeah.
what we've learned, and these were the mistakes to not ever do, right?
Yeah.
And that gave us, I think, that gave us a unique edge, as opposed to a lot of people that came to the game a lot later, where they're trying to figure it out. So
Yeah.
when things moved online, because of COVID, by April we shifted the entire business online. Everything moved online.
Yeah.
Anything that could be repackaged digitally, we did it. Anything that didn't, we killed it.
Right.
And we've been working remotely since. And that in itself brought new challenges. Where I remember I have right next to me here, I have a soundboard, um, a digital mixer that I used to record my podcasts. And I remember you and I were experimenting with this. We're
Yeah.
like, how do we get the audios right? How do I can get the music? Remember,
Yeah.
this was back in April or May.
It's
And
good.
I'm trying to figure this out. And I keep sending you references and we're going back and forth. Like, how do we hack the live DJ stream that you can get it onto Instagram or Facebook or YouTube with the same audio quality that you're experiencing it? And we eventually figured it out. And now that became a big part of the system that of how we run our podcasts from home now.
Interesting.
So it's wonderful. I think it's been, but I think that's the nerd in me. Like I have to try things out and figure it out.
That's what we share, is this wanderlust for figuring it out and technology, and a deep desire to cause culture. I might jack that name. It's great. Since you guys aren't using it. I think that this has been a really good, deep exploration into not just Dubai. I used a little bit of title bait when I titled this talk. I think for those people who maybe didn't know a lot about Dubai, may have come and they'll watch. But I think it's more about the mindset of a cultural explorer, someone who is emancipated by by the shackles of borders, and less constricted by your own cultural identity. And I think people have a perception of Dubai, right? Sex in the City and the malls and shopping. Like, it's so funny when I go to the market, they'll be like, "Yo, did you go shopping?" I'm like, yeah.
No.
We have here in the U.S. I mean, except where you have you have
The same thing.
same thing. But what I will say is that the one thing I will say about the mall is that the mall, like the coffee shop, is a physical space where people come to eat, do meetings, shop, and the way that space is important in the region because it's so hot. So having a place you can go that has air conditioning is really important. And I love, just bringing it back to space, this idea of a physical space that represents me. And we also cover this idea of a digital space that I trust. And in this conversation, this is kind of what I do with these interviews. I'm literally, and you guys are watching this in real time. I'm literally like, I have like 3 ideas that I'm going to talk to you about off of this show.
Let's do it.
That I'm literally texting people as I'm talking to you. Like,
I love it.
Boom, 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 boom. So this isn't just.
Sorry to interrupt real quick, but just real quick on the point of space.
Yeah.
And I love it every time this topic comes up because I kid you not, the Lord Finesse, Carlos Mayer, the founder of Notorious IB in Amsterdam, which is the Europe's largest b-boy championship. Every hip hop head that ever came on the Dukkan show repeats the same message, which is you guys now have gone to where you are. You have a responsibility to build space and create space for the next generation, for the kids. And that is, I think, if there's ever a lesson that hip hop passes down through generations, is you have a responsibility to build space.
Love that. I love that.
it's one of those things that I just heavily believe in. And to your point, whether it's physical or digital spaces, it is our responsibility to always build space.
Yes. Wow, that is beautiful. And I didn't really own that until
Mhm.
recently, because we've been reimagining our business model here at the Authenticated Ventures, and thinking about physical space and thinking about destinations. And man, I'm going to actually end on that note because it gives me a lot to chew on, and a
Yeah,
lot to think about, and, um, and a lot for us to imagine as we think about building these bridges between the
right.
region and what we're doing. Is this idea of physical space, knowing that I have a home, just to bring it all back, knowing I have a place to
I
crash,
like how you did that.
you know what I mean, knowing I have a place to go kick it, and knowing that I have that place anywhere around the world. I think is critical and vital for the creative
Right.
culture. Before you joined, you probably heard a little bit. I do believe that
Mhm.
2022 is the year for the creative. I think 2022 is the year that we travel more, and we literally unleash all of these
Yeah.
ideas we spent 2020 working on, 2021 building digital spaces around. And then once we go to 2022 is when the artisan is empowered with community, digital
Yeah.
infrastructure, new ways of capitalization and financing. And so that
Mhm.
2022 becomes this explosion for the creative economy. And
I believe that. I believe that.
I'll
Yeah.
probably write a book on it. So someone asked me what happened to 2021. Nothing happened to 2021. 2021 is when you got your ass together and you figured out that you actually don't need to be in the social web. We deconstructed the social web, and everybody became a social network, right? And that you
Mhm.
own your eyeballs, you own your access to your audience, you own the data, right? And then
Right.
you figure it out versus giving it to Facebook or Twitter or
Mhm.
Clubhouse or anybody else. That you
Right.
actually own the construct, and you own your own Dukkan, your own bodega, your own favela,
Yes.
if you would, and you basically contain all the culture in there, and you build marketplace underneath that. And
Mhm.
so I think that I'm super excited about what's possible for us. I always love doing these things with you. We definitely don't talk enough. Wait till you see what
No.
we have planned for the rest of the year. We got to connect. And and so I'm super excited. I'm super excited about
Yeah.
2022.
I
Uh,
look forward to it.
and then I'm super excited about 2020 because we got a few more months to kind of plot and plan. But as
Right.
a futurist, I'm always thinking 18 months ahead, 24 months ahead. And I think it's really important. I think you think the same way. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you, my
Thank
brother.
you. Thank you for having me, man. I really
Shout out
appreciate that. Thank you.
soon. Yeah, and
Inshallah, hit me up. Let's work on these business concepts. I'm ready.
absolutely. All right, thank you, Culture and Code family. What city? I always do this. What city are you guys tuning in from? Give me some cities. I love telling stories about cities. By the way, see if you know any of these cities. If you're out there and you're enjoying this, please don't be bad. Sorry, the guys out here blowing leaves and stuff. Tell me what city you're
And
talking from. Orle vato. What city? Boston. I see you, Boston, on the check-in.
Malika Duat,
Boston, London.
London.
Hey, mate, eating is cheating. There's no pubs in London right now. The pub
Hey,
game.
nobody does it better than Londoner, huh?
Oh man, London is amazing. Miss London. I just said that the other day. I was watching Boiler Room, and I was like, damn, I really gotta like. There's a couple of DJs, dope female DJs coming out of
Yo,
London.
in NorCal.
Sacramento on the check-in. What's up, Sacramento? Yo, love Sacramento, the capital of my beautiful state of California. Sacramento is, before we shut down for the pandemic, I was doing Culture and Code as a physical tour, and
Mm-hmm.
you and I started talking a little bit about coming to Saudi and bringing a whole
I
group.
remember, yeah.
So we got to figure that out. Who else is out there?
Yeah.
London, Boston, Sacramento. Tell me where else you're calling in from. I'd love to hear what cities that you're checking in from. I love cities. Cities are my thing.
Yeah.
I fall in love
Yo,
with
so
cities. Yeah.
if you ever go to London, you should definitely hit up 492. She's an incredibly talented artist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You mean
She's your London plug.
you mean this 492 that's hitting me on Twitch? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
She's the London plug.
she's the London plug. She's the London you. Nice. 492. I'm easy to find. Let's get up. We'll have to have 492 on here. Now, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to see you. Baltimore on the check.
Thank you, James. Ooh, what's up, Baltimore?
Yeah. All right. Good stuff.
All right, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Talk soon, man.
Peace.
Peace.